Hello, Clemson students, faculty, and staff. My name is Landon Heydrich. I am the graduate assistant for the Rutland Institute for Ethics and the president of the Change Student Organization. Today, I will be presenting the STAR model, which is an ethical decision-making model developed by the Rutland Institute. I will be going over a specific dilemma and how to thoroughly solve it through the problem while applying ethical practices. So to start off with, let's dive into the topic. What is an ethical issue? Defined, it is a problem or situation that requires a person or organization to choose between alternative solutions that must be evaluated as right, the ethical situation, or wrong, the unethical situation. With decision making comes processes such as active problem solving, logical thinking, and moral evaluations. So the acronym STAR stands for stop, test, act, and reflect in that respective order. We have to stop and grasp the whole picture of the problem at hand, recognize that it is an ethical issue, and proceed with identifying the stakeholders, which are just those affected by the problem. This could be one person, a group of people, an organization, etc. How is this issue impacting those involved? And lastly, after thinking logically about the issue, problem solve at least 3 different solutions to the problem you are facing. Putting the solutions to the test is really important and will be valuable when deciding on the best way to act and respond to the matter. There are several ethical tests that can be used below. It is required that 3 of these tests be chosen to play against each solution, but it is also suggested as good practice to use all of the tests as a means of maximum effectiveness. The harm test evaluates which solution may be more or less harmful than the alternatives. The legality test justifies an action being legal or illegal. The precedent test looks at whether or not the potential solutions would set a problematic precedent or one that may cause a drastically different outcome in another fact pattern. The respect test examines how someone you respect might perceive your morals after following through with the solution. The golden rule test asks the question, would I still think the choice of this option good if I were one of those adversely affected by it? Putting yourself in another person's shoes, so again, the stakeholders, and thinking, how would I want to be treated? Lastly, the peer or colleague test allows users to evaluate how others may respond or provide advice when you describe to them the problem and the specific option as your decision. Now that you are more informed on your dilemma and the solutions that you've come up with after having applied the test, how will you act? Which solution will you use to overcome the ethical issue? After you've made your decision to act, own that decision. Take responsibility to fully follow through with your plan. Think about the anticipated outcome, and if necessary, adapt and modify your decision to secure the most positive results possible. So just to give you a brief overview before we present the example of the ethical dilemma and break it down, here's a condensed version of the STAR model. It is simple to remember what the acronyms stand for. So again, you have stop, recognize, identify, and develop. There's test, use at least 3 of the following 6 ethical tests: the harm test, the legality test, the precedent test, the respect test, the golden rule test, or the peer or colleague test. Third, you're going to act. That's just making a decision. And fourth, you're going to reflect. Consider the outcome, take responsibility, and adapt for the future. I will now turn it over to Dr. Bill McCoy, the director of the Rutland Institute for Ethics, as well as director for Pan-African Studies, to introduce the dilemma and how the model applies.
Thank you, Landon. The ethical issue for discussion is presented here. Mrs. Jackson is the superintendent of a small school district in Indiana. She loves her students and is very loyal to helping them in any way possible. One student in particular, Johnny, has needed extra help from Mrs. Jackson in the past. She has previously helped him buy groceries and has even helped clean his house. One day, Mrs. Jackson noticed that Johnny was not at school. She did not call the Department of Child Services out of fear that he would be put into a foster home due to his family situation. Mrs. Jackson decided to help the best way she knew how. She went to Johnny's house to investigate the issue. She found that Johnny was sick and needed to go to the doctor, but he didn't have insurance. Due to her closeness to Johnny and her love for her students, Mrs. Jackson faces a very difficult ethical dilemma. She ponders what she should do with the current situation. As Landon mentioned, you first want to stop and do three things. Number one, you want to recognize the problem and the issues contributing to the problem. Number two, you want to identify the stakeholders. And last, number three, you want to develop at least three potential solutions. Let's go through these one by one. What is the problem or problems? Well, we have a school district leader who wants to help a particular student in a way that may cause issues. We also have a student in need of healthcare assistance. There is no information about the parents, but we can assume that Mrs. Jackson has at least been in communication with at least one of them because she has been in Johnny's house. So who are the stakeholders? How are they involved? Certainly Mrs. Jackson and Johnny, along with the entire school district, since they would be paying for Johnny's care, and also Johnny's parents. The insurance company would also be a stakeholder, since they would potentially pay the claim. So the central question to consider is this: is it really ethical for the superintendent to break the law and consider the alternative of filing the student under her son's health insurance to get him the proper medical attention he so desperately needs? Some would say that if that's the only option, the ends justify the means. Others would say that upholding the law to stay out of trouble is always the best option. Let's look at some potential solutions. In general, the easiest solution to consider is to simply do nothing. Also, since Mrs. Jackson is already proposing to deceitfully use her insurance, another solution is to proceed with deceit. Yet another solution is to contact Johnny's parents and see what is going on and why they have not been able to get him the care that he so desperately needs. And yet another solution is to take Johnny to an appropriate healthcare facility and simply pay for the bill out of pocket. Although there are other potential solutions, let's push these four solutions through three tests. We will now take a look at this table to use the ethical test. On the left column, you will see our four solutions again. On the top columns, running horizontally, you will see the three tests we have chosen: the harm test, the legality test, and the precedent test. A rule of thumb when using this model is to make sure you filter each solution through each of the three ethical tests you choose. We will be going down the columns vertically, taking each solution through one test at a time. Solution 1 fails the harm test because Johnny's condition might worsen if she decides to do nothing. Solution 2 passes the harm test, so we're pretty good here. Taking him to the doctor would help him rather than harm him. Solution 3 passes with flying colors. Thinking logically, it would make sense to contact the parents first to understand more about why he is sick at home and then go from there. Solution 4 also passes the harm test because, again, he is receiving medical attention, so helping rather than harming. Starting with the legality test, we can see that solution 1 gets a thumbs down. It is likely that the state of Indiana has laws in place for schools to practice mandated reporting in the event of child neglect. Moving forward, solution 2 also receives a thumbs down because falsifying insurance documents is highly illegal. Solution 3 passes for a school leader to contact her students' parents. Solution 4 passes the legality test as well. Lastly, we have the precedent test. Solution 1 would definitely form a problematic precedent for the future because others may choose to do nothing for a child in need as well. It gets a thumbs down. Solution 2 does not pass the test either. Why? Because we run the risk of someone possibly following this illegal behavior in the future. Solution 3 passes the test because it is the right first action to make this dilemma. It will lead to many of others being helped in the future. Solution 4 gets a thumbs down because it is not the most appropriate action for this dilemma and would likely cause issues in the future. So we have a winner. Solution 3 passes all 3 tests. As you work through the model and each scenario, you begin to think logically about the ethical dilemma. We can assume that with solutions 2 and 4, Mrs. Jackson would not know the necessary information about Johnny to get him seen by a physician at a clinic. She would first have to contact the parents. We can also assume from the information given that Mrs. Jackson must have some form of relationship with the family to show up to Johnny's house. So contacting the parents is the best option. With this dilemma, we have chosen to act by contacting Johnny's parents because it seems to be the best fit based on the ethical tests. An important last step is to reflect on the chosen solution. Remember the 3 steps to this. We feel comfortable with the decision we have arrived with after running the ethical dilemma through the tests, so we can take responsibility for that decision. The main outcome will be that Mrs. Jackson will get information from the parents to clarify the issue and act appropriately with the new information. Here, we do not need to adapt or modify because the decision has passed the ethical tests. I hope this gives you a better understanding of the STAR model and how to use it when ethical decisions need to be made during a complicated dilemma. I will now turn it back over to Landon to finish the discussion.
Thank you, Dr. McCoy. I would like to bring to your attention an opportunity for Clemson students from the Rutland Institute for Ethics, the STAR Model Video Contest. Briefly, it can be any Clemson student who designs a video using and presenting the STAR model as we have just done. There are monetary prizes available and dates and deadlines are listed here. Thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation. We hope that it was informative and gives you a better idea of how to use our model when faced with an ethical problem. Again, my name is Landon Heindrich. My contact information is listed here, as well as contact info for the Rutland Institute. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.